Excellent. Okay, wonderful to welcome you. For those who don't know, I guess a relatively new resident of Chicago, Rabbi Shmuel Reichman. Delighted to welcome you and have you introduce your new sefer, your new wonderful book. Maybe just begin just a couple of words about what brought you to Chicago, what you're up to now.
So first of all, it is a tremendous chus to be here with you, Rabbi Grant. And it's a pleasure to be in Chicago. I have some Midwestern blood. My father, Rabbi Dr. Eddie Reichman, is originally from Milwaukee. So I'm back to Midwest. My wife, Rivka Greenberg, her maiden name, is originally from Chicago as well. And I'm originally from the Five Towns, from Woodmere. I grew up there. I went to DRS for high school. I went to Shalavim for a couple of years. And then I had the tremendous zechus to learn in Yeshiva University. I was in a Rosenzweig share for many years. I got smicha from YU, from REITs. And then I got a master's from Revel, a master's in Israeli, education in Jewish philosophy. I studied Harvard for a little bit. And I moved here a couple of years ago with my wife. My wife is getting a JD, a law degree from University of Chicago, from Chicago, and I'm getting a PhD in University of Chicago as well. So we made the short trip from New York to Chicago, and we love the Midwest. We love being out of town, in town in Chicago. It's like the beautiful mix, and it's great to be here. It's a wonderful, wonderful community.
Marvelous. So this book, The Journey to Your Ultimate Self, this Lech Lecha, this journey, how did you come to write this volume? What was your journey to get to this beautiful book on the Parsha?
That is a great question. When I was younger, when I was in high school, I never really aspired to be too great. And my life pretty much fell apart when I was about 17 or 18. I faced some medical difficulties, faced some near-death experiences. And I started to go on a very different journey. I won't tell you all about my story. It's a very long story. But in essence, the journey for myself personally became the journey to strive to become the greatest person I can become. And I was originally pre-med when I started YU, and that kind of shifted a little bit after just a little while. But the goal became to really delve into the depths of Torah in the most genuine and profound way. And when I was younger, I thought what we needed in Klal Yisrael was inspiration. And I love inspiration. Some of what I do is more motivational, inspirational. But it became very, very clear very, very soon that while inspiration is great, what we need is depth. We need profound wisdom, ideas, delving into the underlying fundamental principles and concepts of Torah, not inspirational fluff. And in Lamdas, or Rosenzweig will show the incredible depth of a sugya be'in. You take a sugya in Shas and you open it up. And, Rosenzweig's, what I like to think of him as the beautiful synthesis of the Rav of Soloveitchik and Rav Lichtenstein, where he would show the absolute depth of the spectrum of a sugya. Whereas as opposed to showing a mahalach in a sugya where it's A, you can say it's A or B. Or you can say it's A or B, or maybe C, which is a synthesis of A and B. Or you can say it's A, B, C, or, there are different categories of A, different categories of B, different categories of C. And then there's nuances in between. You start to build the infrastructure and the depth and the tapestry of a sugya and Shas. And while also doing that, sort of Lichtenstein would kind of map out the sugya. You'd also have a mahalach, chakiyun the Rambam, something which, a chiddush in the sugya, like the Rav, really reading it in a unique way, while also appreciating the breadth and the spectrum. But when I was delving into the more machshava realms of Torah as well, it wasn't that it wasn't being done. If you learn the Ramchal and the Maharal, Nefesh HaChaim of Tzaddik, it's unbelievably intricate and deep and nuanced and layers and layers of wisdom. But in terms of what was accessible to me and to everyone I knew, it wasn't accessible. And it became my mission to not only delve into the realms of halacha and Gemara Be'in, and also give Shir Medical Halacha and, moral dilemmas and things like that, but to really delve into the depth of Jewish wisdom, the depth of machshava, and, open up these deeper sugyas to the masses and to really give people an inspiring but accessible gateway into the deepest ideas of Torah. And the way that I developed the Sefer is that really it's fundamentally a Machshava Sefer, but it's organized according to the Parsha so that people can actually have almost like a curriculum for learning it. Because very often you open up a Machshava Sefer and you close it because it's daunting to open up a philosophy Sefer that's talking, meaning there are Sfarim that talk about, Divrei Torah Dvar Lach. And then there's Sfarim that talk about ideas. And when you are learning something new, something that's going to make you think, make you struggle, have to open up new areas of your mind and inner consciousness, not just tell you what you already know, it's difficult. And without having it structured, having a way to really say, I can do this, you'll close the book and you won't learn it. So what I did is I organized it according to the Parsha, where you have it already set within the yearly cycle. Something that's going to make you think, make you struggle.
Whoops, sorry for the feedback there. Now we got it.
No problem. And the way that it's structured as well is that in addition to be organized according to the Parsha, it takes the beauty of inspiration and marries it to the deepest elements of Torah. So every chapter opens up with an inspiring story that fundamentally frames the ideas inside that chapter. And at the end of every chapter, there are summary points, because very often you learn new ideas and you come away saying, what did I actually learn? When you hear something that you've heard 100 times, it's okay. But when you hear something new, you walk away and you say, what did I really learn? And then I'll just say the last two things in terms of how the Sefer structure, that there's also discussion questions at the end of every chapter to bring it into a social environment for the Shabbos table, for a chavrusa, whether you're going to, share with your friends, stuff like that. And then also action points so that you can actually live the ideas in the chapter. Because very often, as the famous saying goes, there's a great gap between the head and the heart, because you learn ideas, but then it becomes an intellectual endeavor. How do you actually live Torah? So there are action points at the end of every chapter to help you actually bring these ideas into your life. So you can actually say, here's a concrete way for me to take this incredible idea that the Maharal, the Ramchan of Shechaim, the Ramban, and bring it into your life so you can start living Torah.
Beautiful. So maybe give us some context. What are some Sfarim that you have enjoyed, and some books maybe that in general put this Sefer in the context? Like, what are some of the sources that you mentioned before, some of the Sifrei Kodesh, Maharal and Nefesh HaChaim and Reb Tzadok? What are some of the other Sfarim, and maybe more general Sfarim or books that can fill in the constellation of the reader of what you're thinking about when you're writing the Sefer?
That's a great question. And I think it's a multi-layered question, because there are different types of books and there are different types of Sfarim. And there are very niche types of books where you want to very much isolate yourself within a field. And then there are books that are interdisciplinary, interconnected, that try to draw from different areas and really take the best. So in terms of Sifrei Kodesh, whenever you're dealing with fundamental core Torah principles, you're going to start from the root and express outwards. So you start with, Kol Torah Kula in terms of Tanakh. Then you have Mamar Chazal, you have Mishnayos, and you have Gemara, and you have Midrashim, and then you have, the classical Rishonim, classical commentaries on the Torah. And in terms of the early Bali Machshava, you have the Maharal, then you have the Ramchal, Nefesh HaChaim, Reb Tzadok, Sfas Emes. In terms of the later Bali Machshava, you have Rav Dessler, you have, in today's generation, you have Rav Moshe Shapiro, you have Rav Akiva Tatz, you have the Masorah of that real unique synthesis of delving into the deeper, in between the inaccessible mystical aspects of Torah and the accessible revealed aspects of that Torah. And that was, the Maharal's tremendous koach of taking the wisdom which is simply inexpressible in words and finding a way to express it in universal philosophical language, where anyone without any background of certain sod inaccessible Torah knowledge will be able to delve into the deepest elements of Torah thought. And then you also then have, the realms of psychology and inspiration. And in terms of the greatest skill set is not becoming a great intellectual when you're writing a book. When you want to learn, how you formulate, how you put it into words is not so important for other people. But when you're trying to write a sefer that will reach people, you need to say, how do I take this content and package it in a way that I'm going to almost get outside of where I am, think about how I got here, and create a pathway for the student who's could be any age, any background, and help them get to a certain fundamental goal of accessing ideas that are so deep and so easily misunderstood. And you want to somehow marriage that with inspiration and with formulating it in a way that is still so deep and profound. You don't want to take away any of the actual content, but you want to figure out a way of making it accessible. And then you have to think about making it inspiring, but not fluffing it up. And you have to make it developmental, and you have to get outside of the way that you currently understand that knowledge. And you have to say, what about someone who doesn't yet understand it? How do I get inside their head and start building it? And it's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me is my wife was reading one of my articles and she said, I think you can actually do this a little better. What if you put this over there and put that over there? And I said, that's a really good idea. So she started editing all of my articles, all the chapters in the book. We actually tag teamed. I would write every Matzah Shabbos, I would write a chapter, and I would send it to her as I was writing it, and she would edit it and send it back to me. So it was a tremendous journey. And I would say the greatest goal of Torah learning is to become Torah, not just to learn it. As for Torah to transform you, for you never to go into a shir and come out of a shir the same way. And to really do that, Torah has to be unified as an interconnected oneness where you're really integrating all of Torah together. Like you learn any sugya in Shas, and to really understand the sugya, you have to understand all those other sugyas that come up along the way. But to understand those sugyas, you have to learn all these other sugyas. And to understand those sugyas, you have to learn all these other sugyas. You have to realize how this is the greatest wisdom of all time, where everything interconnects with everything else. You need to really immerse yourself in it. And Torah isn't just, being the kind of the mitzvah Talmud Torah. That's an aspect, but it is literally like there is nothing that should bring more life and joy and energy to your day than in just immersing yourself in Torah. But to do that, you need to learn Torah the right way. It needs to become something that, number one, you view as transformative. Number two, you view as infinitely deep. And number three, you view as you're literally entering into a realm where everything you know is going to be invested into this experience of Torah, and whatever you learn is going to affect everything else you know and everything else you are. And the goal of this Sefer was to create a truly transformative experience where you're not just being Makayim your mitzvah of learning Torah, but it's going to change the way you see the world, yourself, Hashem, Klal Yisrael, mitzvahs, ideas, Kol Torah Kula. And it should be enjoyable, inspiring, deep, profound. And yeah, you'll struggle. It'll be hard. You'll have to, really struggle to really contemplate concepts you may never have heard before. But there's nothing more worthwhile. And the goal was to create an experience where you really not only have the struggle of Torah, but also the enjoyment.
Beautiful. So tell everyone, where can they find this Sefer if they want to pick it up?
Where can you find the Sefer? So Baruch Hashem, we actually sold out very early, only a couple of weeks after it came out, but we did a reprint. So it should be available in just about every bookstore. All the bookstores in Chicago have copies now. And if you'd like to get online, you can get online as well. You can just search the Sefer. You can also go to my website, shmuelreichman.com, and you can order it from Amazon, from Zayika Feldheim, or any other online store as well. And I would love to take this journey with you. If you have any questions about the Sefer, you can definitely send me a message as well. But it should be quite easy to get a copy.
Easily accessible. Awesome. So unfortunately, we're going to be more brief tonight than we had originally planned due to the Hespedim this evening for the Sar HaTorah, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. So just to close, can you share with everyone one idea that you didn't put in the Sefer, something that is an expression of what you were describing before, but didn't make the final cut? Is there something that if you could have put it in there, you would have, but an idea that didn't actually make it into the Sefer?
That's a great question. So I'll tell you that originally the Sefer wasn't just organized by the Parsha, but it also had all of the Chagim. It also had all of the Chagim. It had also Seder insights, which all those, everything that didn't make the cut will make some of the next Svarim. I'm working on a couple of the Svarim as well. But we are coming to Pesach, so I'll share one of the ideas from one of the Pesach chapters that didn't make the cut. If you actually look at the Rav Asher Weiss Haskama, he says a sefer written on the Parsha in Chagim, because at that point it was going to be a Parsha in Chagim sefer, but it ended up becoming a Parsha. But I'll keep it very short because we want. There are many other things that people have to do right now, and we just lost a tremendous gadol b'Yisrael. But the idea is basically the classic question is that if you look at the Seder night seems to be a night of inspiration, right? Klal Yisrael's leaving Mitzrayim, we have the Makos, and we're about to go receive the Torah, and everything's amazing. We're in the highest level possible. Carbon Pesach, Bris Milah, we're literally leaving Mitzrayim. And the Arizal says that had Klal Yisrael left 1 instant later, we wouldn't have become Klal Yisrael. Wouldn't have happened. Not only an instant later, but if we would have gone slower, we wouldn't have become Klal Yisrael. So everyone asks the same question. Klal Yisrael is on the highest level imaginable. What is the result saying? Had we gone a little bit slower? Had we been a little later? Like, what does that 1 second matter? But without getting into the entire chapter, because this is really a 45-minute shir, the basic premise is that we were building the very root. It was the inception of Klal Yisrael. It was the root. And when you have a root, the root needs to be perfect. And that's why, for example, you have a zygote. If you've one the chromosome is missing in a zygote, the whole thing, cataclysmic effects. You have a cut in your finger, it heals. But when you're talking about the root, the seed, right, the actual inception, everything afterwards expressed. So when you're dealing with that root stage, it needs to be perfect. And so when Klal Yisrael was leaving Mitzrayim, the inception of Klal Yisrael was taking place. That root needed to be perfect. That's why we have matzah. 1 second past the 18 minutes is shakaris. The Radvaz doesn't even understand. It's like this literal killer matzah. Like, what exactly is the difference between 1 second and you literally are violating the shakaris? Like, what's going on? But 1 second is all it takes, because when you're dealing with a root stage of Klal Yisrael, it has to be perfect. The rest of the year, you learn from the inspiration. We make mistakes. It's the classic example of why we wash before eating vegetables. One of the examples given and one of the explanations is because even though we don't deal with Tumah and Tahara, we are trying to remind ourselves of certain ideals. And the concept is that on Pesach night, we remind ourselves of our ideals of the inspiration stage, where we're trying to achieve our ultimate greatness. Even though it's sometimes unattainable, you go back to what those ideals are. So when, going to the root of building Klal Yisrael, we had to have a perfect root. And even when you come down into the year and you lose that inspiration during stages, it's always in the back of your mind, reminding yourself what you are truly capable of becoming. So that's a theme which is developed in much greater
Beautiful.
depth. But
so we can take that to our Seder and enjoy it. Rabbi Shmuel Reichman, thank you for the time tonight. Hope everyone has an opportunity to be inspired by your words and your work. Look forward to seeing you again very soon. And now I can already wish you, we're within Shloshim Yom, a Chag Kosher V'Sameach.
Wishing you the same. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Wishing everyone an amazing, amazing night.
Kol Tov. Thanks.